I know it's hypothetical right now, but if you were allowed, for some reason, to run for a third term, is there a thought that the Democrats could try to run Barack Obama against you?
I'd love that.
For his third term?
Boy, I'd love that. That would be a good one. I'd like that. No, people are asking me to run, and there's a whole story about running for a third term. I don't know. I never looked into it. They do say there's a way you can do it, but I don't know about that. But I have not looked into it. I want to do a fantastic job. We have 4 years, just about, almost close to 4 years. Time is flying, but it's still close to 4 years, and we're getting a lot of credit for having done a great job in the first almost 100 days.
Where you may have heard that we found 20 million dead people marked as alive in the Social Security database. This is so crazy. And then you'll notice there's a strange trend here where how many Social Security numbers were issued? Do you want to?
Yeah. So let me tell you what happened here. We started at the top of the system.
You want to talk about a lot of maybe?
We started at the top of the system, mapping the whole system of Social Security to understand where all the fraud was. And there's a lot of great people there that showed us really a lot of waste. And so that came up with a big list of stuff that we're working on. You've heard some of that already. But this is what jumped out at us. When we saw these numbers, we were like, what is this? In 21, you see 270,000 people, goes all the way to 2.1 million in 24. These are non-citizens that are getting Social Security numbers.
Yeah, this is a mind-blowing chart.
Yeah, this literally blew us away. Like, we went there to find fraud, and we found this by accident. And this isn't political, by the way. My parents are immigrants. Yeah, this country's been great to us. My brother and sister all born in Spain. I'm pro-legal immigration. This is not political. This is not political. This is about America and the future of America. And there are a lot of good people in the system that pointed us in this direction. I want to honor them right now, that work in the government today, who took risks to show us these numbers and tell us what's going on. Yeah. So I want to stop for a minute. I want to honor those people today. Very good people. Very good people. I have been from D.C. to Social Security offices to the border to track this down, and very good people have helped us along the way. I want to thank them.
Yeah.
This number, what this is when you come in the country, if you're illegal, there's a couple ways to come in. You come in through a port of entry, and you can tell them you're afraid, and they'll give you an asylum case. You'll get an interview, then you get in. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to just go to the border. Literally, this happened. I talked to Border Patrol myself. Elon was there too. I went to Laredo, and I went to Bronzeville. Elon went to Eagle Pass. You walk up to a Border Patrol officer, and you tell them you want to come in. They have a couple of choices. They could charge you with a misdemeanor or a felony under 1325, or they can make it an administrative offense, like a parking ticket, basically. They were told to do that, make it an administrative offense under the last administration. And then you go walk across the border. They do what's called a release your own recognizance, and they give you an NTA, a notice to appear, which is to appear at a judge. The wait times on judges are like average 6 years. Look at Grok, you'll see it on immigration judges. There's only 700 of them. This is 5.5 million people. Okay? So what happens then? Once you're in the country and you got asylum through one of these pathways, and we map the whole thing out, you can apply for a work document. You file a 765. It's the work form. You get this form called the 766. That's the authorization. And then Social Security Administration automatically sends you in the mail your Social Security.
Pete Hegseth here. We're about to land in Washington, D.C. on our way back from Japan, where we've been meeting with the troops, talking to allies and partners, reestablishing deterrence in the Indo-Pacific. It's Sunday, but of course we're still working. I want to show you one thing. It's a new memorandum that's coming out today on combat arms standards. You see, for far too long, we allowed standards to slip, and different standards for men and women in combat arms MOSs and jobs. That's not acceptable. We need to have the same standard, male or female, in our combat roles to ensure our men and women who are under our leaders or in those formations have the best possible leaders and the highest possible standards that are not based at all on your sex, if you're a man or a woman. So I'm signing this memorandum today. The services will review and soon we will have nothing but the highest and equal standards for men and women in combat.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Thanks for joining us this morning. You know, when I was back in the Air Force back in the day at combat arms training in Nellis Air Force Base, CATS, the phrase was "life's tough, but it's tougher if you're stupid." So we're going to make you not stupid here on this show and give you what you need to know so you can perform adequately above expectations all day long at your job and your family life and your business, etc. So stick with us. We got a packed show today. I'm going to go for the mission brief real quick, and then we'll get into some other topics. Today is April 1st, and it is the SCIF, and we're going to talk with Eric Hovde and Dan Eastman from Wisconsin on Wisconsin issues on the election fraud front that are coming out, seems like every hour. Trump is still working on a third term to cement MAGA. The Russians say they're happiest in a decade. We'll dig into that. And Qatargate update in Israel. And also you heard Pete Hegseth there talking about equalizing combat arms in the military. That's huge. We're going to dig into that. We have a big military audience as well. So all of that is coming. But there's two stories I really want to dig into, or at least talk about also, that just came up. Judge Totenberg in Georgia, who was on the Curling versus Raffensperger case for years in October 2020, she said that the machines in Georgia were illegal against Georgia law because there was no way to confirm who you voted for once you got the printout. All there was a QR code. You didn't know it was in the QR code. So she said, but we're too close to the election in 2020 of October, and therefore we'll stay relief until later. Well, then she delayed, and there was eventually a hearing where the expert witness Haldeman came in and showed that the tabulators, I think it was, can be hacked with a pin. But she just dismissed the case this morning on standing after allowing it to go through the 24 election. So this is huge. We're going to be all over this on our Georgia show program coming up Sunday or tomorrow night and Sunday. We're going to have Garland Favorito from Voter GI on. I'm not sure which day, but he'll be there. Also, big stuff in the Middle East. Turkey and Israel are moving towards some type of confrontation. Turkey just said they're taking over an air base in Syria. The Israelis really don't like it. Israel is going through a lot of turmoil right now politically, but we're going to dig into all that. We're going to be right back with Dan Eastman, who is an attorney in Wisconsin, and we're going to jump right into Wisconsin voter fraud. We'll be right back after this break.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
Pandemic, we can never be caught unprepared again. And so many Americans, when COVID hit, they had nothing in the house. Stores were shut down, and doctors' offices were shut down, and even if doctors prescribed drugs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, pharmacists wouldn't fill the prescriptions. That was a nightmare.
Now the situation is much worse. We have these horrible supply chain problems. In our emergency medical kit at the Wellness Company, we have 8 prescription drugs that are all potentially life-saving.
Most people who died with COVID, they died in the hospital because they didn't receive early treatment.
Every American family should have one of these.
I can tell you the Wellness Company kit is the answer.
So we are in the factory in Kentucky. This is Alp World HQ, and we are at the end of the packing line. So I'm going to show you how it works. We have the card, throw it in there. There's a packing slip, and then you have the Alp. And 4, but that seems honestly like a lot. 3 now, but it's good. These pack a punch that, for a normal nicotine brand, it'd be like 8. We think 3 is fine. Next one. Again, 4. Let's throw 3 in just to keep it fair. Okay? There you go. So you can see you can get fast at this. And really, it's just a matter of repetition. This is kind of the assembly line that, Henry Ford devised so long ago.
Tucker, stealing all the applicants.
Welcome back to the SCIF. We're honored to have with us first time on the show, Dan Eastman. I'm going to bring him in. Dan, thanks for coming on. You come highly recommended from one of our really top contributors here at CDM, Chris Gleason. And I know you work with Peter Bernegger. Am I correct in saying that?
That's right. I've worked with Chris and Peter on the Smurf issue for quite a while. They're good, solid patriots. Absolutely.
So you're an attorney, but I wanted to get you in to talk about Wisconsin. So much going on there. Could we just start with the race that Eric went through and what happened there? I understand the vote by mail stuff was really obscene. I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, Eric Hovde ran for the United States Senate. He's a great guy and a really strong Wisconsinite. And of course, he was a terrific Republican candidate to run against the incumbent Democrat, Tammy Baldwin. And we've been wrestling with election integrity issues in Wisconsin since at least 2016, when independent Green candidate Jill Stein and Hillary Clinton brought a lawsuit complaining that the machines were rigged. And that was in 2016. And of course, in 2020, it accelerated. And we've seen a pattern in Wisconsin where election outcomes tend to be predictable and statistically predictable to the point where it's costing Republicans seat after seat. I think we've lost 23 out of 25 statewide races, and it's a real issue. And it all comes back to this idea of mailing in ballots. When the government got the idea that for the convenience of the populace, that ballots, government documents, these are government documents,
right?
The clerks mail them out, and 45 days, these government documents float around in the world, and then they magically show up back at the clerk's office with a vote, and they're tabulated. This becomes a problem, a chain of custody problem. And we see this in all of these statewide elections, including Eric Hovde's election. With Peter's work and others, and myself, we have analyzed the state voter roll at length. There are 8.2 million names on our state voter roll. There are only 6 million Wisconsinites. Okay, so 2.5 million extra.
How that happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, within that populace, there are what we call phantom voters. They're names and addresses that these people don't exist, but there's a name that can be voted. It can cover a ballot. So if you can stuff the ballot box and assign one of these phantom names, you win. It's good old-fashioned Chicago politics, only played in a digital game. This is the problem with our election systems. They're captured. The voter database is captured. The tabulation systems are captured. Now the poll books are captured electronically. So effectively, if you can stuff the box and assign a name, you win. And that's what we were dealing with in spades last November. And when you look at the election outcome, Donald Trump, in 2016, he won by 20,000 votes out of 3.2 million cast. 4 years later, he lost by 20,000 votes. And this time around, he wins by 39,000 votes. And Eric Hovde was caught in that matrix. And how do you explain Donald Trump coming back with a stronger victory in 2024? People would walk into the polling place and vote for Donald Trump, but not Eric Hovde? No, that's not possible.
Well, we kind of theorized that all the down ballot races were stolen, but they had to let Trump through because it was just too big. I mean, do you tend to agree with that or what?
I do, and you have to ask the question technologically, how can that happen? And we have spent 4 years and amazing 7 figures of dollars figuring that out, not only in Wisconsin, But in all of the swing states, we've had the time to look very deeply into the data. The team that we have looks extremely deeply into the data, and we understand how that mechanism happens. And that's why it was very problematic for Eric, because in essence, if you look at the major polling centers, the 5 big cities in Wisconsin, we're a small state, we call them the Zuckerberg cities because of the amazing generosity of Mr. Zuckerberg and his wife. But the point is, those are mechanisms in place, and people know how to manipulate that for an outcome. And we've been battling this for 4 years, and that's the problem that we've had.
And you've got this, I guess, infrastructure that they say they're Republicans, but I think it's Chinese infiltration up there. I mean, they're just stopping in a kind of disclosure or transparency or, rule of law as far as elections in Wisconsin. Am I correct?
It is, and it's a strong ground game. The Democrats have a very strong ground game. And you mentioned the Chinese connection. I broadcast out of the Milwaukee market when I do my financial report show. I live in Milwaukee. That's my place. And we know that Chinese organizations are funding inner city groups. We know that. We can see it in the 990s. We see it in the data. And it's a very strong market to generate phantoms in a transient population. We have university dorms. We have a lot of Section 8 housing projects. We have populations that tend to come and go, socially disadvantaged, or at least economically disadvantaged populations that are very transient. Those are breeding grounds for harvesting phantom ballots. And we have a lawsuit pending in Milwaukee right now where we demanded that the Milwaukee clerk mail out 31,000 postcards to these phantoms. And if they don't get them back within 30 days, you're supposed to turn them inactive. If you're inactive, you can always show up at the polling place, show your driver's license, and vote. They fought it. This litigation has been going on for well over 6 months. We have one issue on appeal right now. They never sent out the 31,000 cards. Well, last week, my clients, we were right back at the city clerk's office. We presented almost 5,000 names of people who don't live in the city. They signed the NCOA post office change of address form. They've moved away, but yet they're active. The clerk doesn't care. They don't care. They don't care because that population is the bank of names they need to stuff the box and assign the names. And we're fighting the government. We're not, this isn't the political parties. These are the clerks that run the administration of our elections. And we fight our government to just do what the statute says. And we're in court. And there we are. We've had 7 bits of litigation over the last 4 years that all have been, crashed and burned. The courts are not eager to tell the government how to run the election, and the government that runs the election in the state of Wisconsin, they are very biased. And you can look at that with the Wisconsin Elections Commission. We have 6 commissioners who are appointed, 4 of them by the legislature, who have no executive authority whatsoever. Yet they appoint the state elections administrator under HAVA to a 4-year term. The term expired 2 years ago, and recently our Supreme Court basically said 7-0. She can stay in for life. Doesn't matter if her term expires until she's voted out by the commissioners. This whole thing is broken to the point where it needs a complete reset. That's why if you look at what Elon Musk and Doge is doing, you need to come in and establish a democracy mechanism that's transparent. If we don't have transparency and credibility, then democracy dissipates. And that's what we're seeing in this Supreme Court race right now in Wisconsin.
I was going to bring that up. Tell us what's going on there. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, Wisconsin's traditionally a prairie populist state. Back in the Fightin' Bob La Follette days of the early 1900s, people in the Midwest who were primarily European, German, Scandinavian, whatever, their idea was that they didn't trust government because the East Coast government was run by the New Englanders and the Southerners. We have a very open system, and our judges are, when we elect judges, we don't appoint them by the governor, we elect them to a 10-year term, and they're nonpartisan. They don't run Republican, they don't run Democrat. These are nonpartisan. These are like the aristocracy. They're supposed to be above the populi. Well, we have politicized our Supreme Court to the point where you have literally tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars flowing in from people around the country, billionaires, George Soros, Elon Musk, all this money's pouring in to effectively take a 7-person court, 6 women and middle-aged white women and Brian Hagedorn. And these people now have the ability to disregard our legislature and our governor. We have a legislature, we have a governor, we pass bills. That's what democracy works. Pass the bill, governor signs it. We now have a super body that ignores the law. So we might as well just sell the Capitol building, dissolve the legislature, fire the governor, and let these 7 people decide what's good for society. This is the danger to democracy. Now, when the Constitution was created, the idea was 3 branches of government. The people spoke through the legislature. The president or governor is the executive. That's the adult in the room. And the court was supposed to make sure that worked. Well, what the courts have done nationally, and you can see it on national news, they are interfering with the process, not only the legislative process of the people's voice becoming law, but also the executive's ability to administer. This is critically damaging to our democracy. If we end up with a judiciary that runs society, it would be like going back to the Old Testament when the judges ran the place before King Solomon showed up, or
no kidding.
Saul showed up, okay? This is not our constitutional government. This is not our representative form of government. But this is what we're seeing, because the Supreme Court, 7 members, allegedly there are now 3 conservatives and there are 4 liberals. There shouldn't be conservatives or liberals. There should be 7 people who strictly construe the law the way the legislature and the governor see it, which is the voice of the people, the vox populi. We are at a point now where we're negating our legislature and our governor. So it's millions of dollars, because what happens, the Wisconsin Supreme Court, when it turned left 2 years ago, they redistricted the entire state. The Republicans had a supermajority in the Senate, and our assembly was close, 1 vote off. They rejiggered all the districts, and lo and behold, now it's a much more balanced state, even though when you look county by county, it's a completely red state, except for these 5 counties. They want to do that at the congressional level. And the amazing thing was, when they redistricted the state, the United States Supreme Court had opined on those districts. It went back to Wisconsin, and our court just ignored it. And then, of course, because of weak leadership in our legislature, they basically folded. This will
is it weakness or is it complicity? What do you think?
I don't know. And the problem is, I don't know. And if I don't know, nobody else knows. We don't know. But it shouldn't be happening, because the legislature decides how you redistrict. And think about how that process happens. Every 10 years, the census comes out, federal census. You start with the congressional districts. And that's built by ward. Wards are little basic building blocks where we vote. You get the congressional districts set, and then you wiggle around and you get the Senate districts and the assembly districts. If they're going to change the districts in midstream every 10 years, we're in midstream 2025. We don't have a functioning democracy. What we have is political gamesmanship. And the purpose of this nonpartisan races was that the people would decide who judges them. I want to be able to vote for the person who sits in judgment of me, so I don't end up, on the wrong side of a lawsuit. That's gone. When you got Governor Pritzker, a big drug billionaire from Illinois, and Illinois is a classic example of why you live in Wisconsin instead of south of here. That's a train wreck down there. But here comes their governor spending millions of dollars, and the mysterious George Soros and all that money's pouring in. They're deciding who judges us. The people of Wisconsin have no power in this at all. We are the serfs.
Chris Gleason has been good about describing what's going on in Florida with the vote by mail, where 200,000 applications appear on a Sunday when the office is closed. They get sent out. Half of them are undeliverable, and half of those vote. So it's really insane. So do you think there needs to be some kind of federal response to this? Because it's not
President Trump. I've been on this soapbox a bit. President Trump, President of the United States, he's the chief executive officer of the United States Post Office. Period. That's what the president does. The Post Office is a it's a quasi agency. It's not a department. The point is the president's in charge of that thing. By executive order today, he could stop the use of the United States mails for mailing ballots because of mail fraud. We've been busting gangsters on mail fraud since the 1930s. You can stop it today by issuing an executive order. You will not use the United States mail to convey a ballot. It will stop. We'd like to see that. That has to stop. I mean, you think about it. When you walk into a polling place, you show your driver's license, they hand you a ballot, You've got about 3 minutes with that government document. You go to the booth, you color in the little circles, run it through the tabulator, and you leave. Okay. You vote early, you go to the clerk's office, same thing. She hands it to you, color in the circles, put it in the envelope, and you leave. With mail-in ballots, you've got custody for maybe 3 minutes. But with mail-in ballots, you got 45 days, and those are
You can
floating
take your
around.
time and coordinate and collude and do everything you want.
The street value of a ballot in Milwaukee is $40. If you stumble upon a ballot in a mail stack somewhere in a Section 8 housing project,
That's fine.
$40, man. So you're out there looking. It's like collecting aluminum cans, only you're going to do it with ballots and make a lot more money. This is the problem. The post system was not designed to convey government documents. I mean, that's why we have DocuSign when you sign a contract to buy a house. Nobody in their right mind is going to mail a contract through the post office. But yet our democracy, the one place where Americans touch their government is at the voting booth. And they have destroyed that process. Because while we go through the illusion of an election, you go to the polling place, you vote, you think you're making a difference. The reality is the people who control the system control the ballots. And the goal is you've got to get the ballots through the tabulator. That's why they're talking, you got to have paper ballots. We've had paper ballots in Wisconsin forever. In Jill Stein back in 2016, they wanted a hand count of every paper ballot, 3 million plus, because nobody trusted the systems back then.
Yeah.
Same thing in 2020 when President Trump had his count. I was there. I was on the team. And we said, hey, we want to see the absentee ballot envelopes and we want to see the absentee ballots because they're all folded in thirds. Well, there are a lot more absentee ballots folded in thirds than there were envelopes. Wow, how did that happen?
Okay.
Then they don't want you to see. They don't want you to see. Okay.
Dan,
and that's part of our litigation. That's what we're.
I need to take a break. Can you stay for one more segment? Another 15 minutes or so? All right. We'll be right back after this break. Great conversation. Stay with us.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
True life Alp story. I got a call from a friend of mine yesterday, honestly, true story, who said his girlfriend had just broken up with him over Alp. He wouldn't stop. And I thought to myself, that's kind of sad. And he said, no, it's not sad. Imagine if I'd married her. Now I know I was saved. Then the next day, this same friend is driving at twice the speed limit through a major American city, pulled over by a cop in a speed trap. Cop takes his license registration, goes back to the patrol car, runs him, comes back, looks in the window, and sees a tin of Alp on the dashboard. Pauses, stunned, says to my friend, you use Alp? Yeah, I do, says my friend. So do I, says the cop. We all do. He looks at my friend thoughtfully and goes, drive safely, sir, and hands back his license and registration. No ticket. So in 2 days, he's saved from a tragic marriage to a girl who doesn't like Alp and a speeding ticket. All true. It's more than a nicotine patch.
So Dan, thanks for staying with us. I wanted to get into what happened in Hovde's race, and I'm sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, but besides the vote by mail, there was a promise from the GOP that there would be an army of attorneys there, and but when he lost, they said, well, it's going to cost you millions of dollars of your own money, I think, to deal with this and try to fight it. So he didn't. What is your opinion of how the GOP reacted in that whole race?
Well, it's a problem between the grassroots people who've been toiling since 2016, 2020, and the GOP establishment organization. And I deal with this every day in Wisconsin. I'm a long-term Republican kind of guy, but I'm very much on the outs with respect to the process involved. We have looked at the substance and the mechanisms of how cheats happen, and the Republicans tend to be looking at a very old model that is the result of a consent agreement that they were bound to bizarrely back in the Clinton and Obama days. They're not looking in the right places. They tend to think that people will come to a polling place and present a false ID and vote. And nobody in this day and age will do that. You will not put yourself at risk. They don't understand the sophistication of how elections are manipulated. We've looked at this not only in the United States, but in other countries, how they do it as well. Republicans don't see that. So there was an interesting dichotomy on election night. I was at Central Count in Milwaukee because we had crystal clear data, including convictions and depositions and sworn testimony as to how the deal came down in 2020. And the Republican army of lawyers was there as well. And they were tending to focus on the irrelevant. Like somebody noticed that there was a seal broken on a machine, and that became a big thing. And then Senator Ron Johnson, a good friend of mine, he came down in a big press conference, the seal was broken. They didn't quite understand how the steel, not the seal, but the steel happens. And my team, I had 3 lawyers, myself and 2 other lawyers, effectively were able to stop the introduction of 70,000 extra ballots at 8 o'clock at night because we were able to pin the clerk down. How many absentee ballots are you actually counting? And we got that number at about 8:11. A very, very good lawyer that I work with was able to pin that number down. And once the clerk had pinned the number down, the 60,000 ballots couldn't show up. You couldn't count them. So we stopped that. Republicans didn't even know what we were doing. They were running around, looking for people with fake mustaches.
Again, it's at this point, after 4 years of evidence been coming out, how the machines and all this process vote by mail is impacting the elections, for people to act like, well, it's just a seal that's broken. I mean, they are either just really not effective, or they are intentionally not looking in certain spots.
Again, I don't know, and that bothers me because I don't know. We know what we're looking for. Let me give you an example. I have a case with a very good client who you know in Milwaukee County, and we asked for the machine images on election night 2020. And my client was given the machine images of the recount 9 days later. And the machines that were used in the recount were rented machines from somewhere else. And of course, we have the images from the recount, which shows Trump lost. We don't have the images from election night, because if we had the images from election night, you would see the 60,000 skinny ballots printed by the handicap machines that ran through, at City Hall. But they don't show you that. And we actually have a deposition next week. We're going to be in, this is 4 years ago. That was, we're in 5 years. We will not see those images on election night, because what it will show is that there were 60,000 handicapped people who showed up in Milwaukee City Hall and voted. It was to look like Lourdes. Can you imagine 70,000 people showing up at City Hall who are disabled trying to vote on a handicap machine? It didn't happen.
It's kind of like 223,000.
Weeks printing these ballots. This is what we're dealing with at our level. So when they are, I love the Republican Party. That's what we got. It's great. But they aren't digging at the level that we dig at. And now, to be fair, they don't have the resources that we have to dig. We working with some pretty sophisticated people around the country who know how this process works. So we're in there and we're stopping this. An interesting thing about last November, Hovde's race again, is that it was a record turnout statewide. But yet Milwaukee had 60,000, 69,000 fewer absentee ballots cast because we stopped it at 8 o'clock at night. You see, this is how you have to understand. That's why we're watching this today. Wisconsin has gone to this bizarre model of, instead of counting all the ballots, absentee and poll at the polling place, they create central count to be more efficient. Twice as number of machines, more public government labor, utilities, rent, big costs, because they want to count over here. And
it's control. It's control. It's centralized.
Yeah,
right? That's the key word.
Watching the polling place,
Yeah.
You got to watch central count. We've gone to 41 central counts. We got 1,852 municipalities, 41 central counts. And today we have a team at every one of those 41 places. We have hired private investigators who know what they're looking for. We have lawyers. We have lots of people paying attention to what's happening today. And if somebody's going to try to shove extra ballots through a central count, we will see them. And we will know. We will know what happens. And
how do you think this is going to go today? Because, like you said, I mean, if she gets elected, she can go in and rejigger Congress, right?
Yeah. Well, this is a critical race, but I've been a lawyer for a long time, for amazingly long time. It's quite remarkable how time flies. But always the court, And Wisconsin had a very, very sophisticated court, modeled after the Massachusetts model, because this was the old Northwest Territories. It was a very well-respected court. And we've had some very liberal justices. The late, great friend of mine, Shirley Abrahamson, was a very good jurist, a brilliant jurist, but kind of a left-leaning person. But people respected the court. Today, I mean, they banned drop boxes, ballot drop boxes, like 2 years ago. And in 18 months, now with the shift, they brought ballot boxes back. Well, from a lawyer's perspective, thinking of stare decisis and the need for stability in our judicial system, a court that flips on itself in 18 months is a very scary court, because they can flip on property rights and gun rights, and every right can be, just depending upon which set of billionaires gets their puppets on the court. That's the policy. It negates the legislature and the governor. And we, the citizens, are becoming more and more serf-like by the day. We're the money. We pay our taxes. We're the money. And we create the illusion of voting. Go and vote for somebody, but they're running the society through the courts, and this is a really big problem. No lawyer in Wisconsin should be happy about a Supreme Court that flips on itself because of somebody who gets elected. We're supposed to have, it's only 7. We got 6 million people in Wisconsin. Okay. You put 7 smart people who are competent to judge the lives of 6 million people. And it's now a football between, billionaires, none of whom who live here. Even our Wisconsin billionaires don't get involved in that. We only got a handful. But we've got out-of-state people deciding who's going to judge Wisconsinites for the purpose of flipping Congress so you can, burn Donald Trump down. This isn't democracy. Nobody signed up for this. But yet, April 15th, man, you better pay your taxes. You don't pay your taxes, they're coming for you. This is a real problem. There's a tremendous disconnect in the United States between the governed and the government. You look at the federal government, $36 trillion in debt, $2.5 trillion annual deficit, $1 trillion or more in debt service, which is over 27% of our tax collections. That system's broke. Where do you think this is going? It's just
it's all in
deterioration of society, where you're going to end up in a situation where this is the stuff that leads to social revolution. It's not good.
That's exactly what's happening, in my view, is a Marxist revolution. But what about this Social Security stuff that came out this week? I mean, your partner Peter basically said, here it is, 2 million in 1 year came in, and this is why we're losing election after election in Wisconsin. What say you about that? Well,
it's a horrible situation, because you have these NGOs run by religious organizations through the church basement. These altruistic bleeding hearts. You just want to bring all these people in and make their lives better. The racket is that these are adding names to the voter roll. And I talked to Eric about this at length. If you're sneaking into the United States, and first of all, you ought to stop and think, because once you get here, they're going to take half of your income in taxes. You talk about freedom. All right. So you're in the United States, you go to the church basement, they sign you up, they give you the prepaid debit card, the pair of tennis shoes, the cell phone. Then you go to the next state and do the same thing, and the next state and do the same thing. Now you're registered in 3 states, right? You're not going to a polling place and casting a ballot because you are new to the country and you don't want to be arrested. You don't go anywhere near a polling place. Well, guess what? This is a proxy situation. They vote for you by proxy because your voice must be heard, and we must get a ballot in for poor what's-his-name who just snuck in from wherever. This is a proxy voting mechanism, goes right back to the phantom voting. So what Peter pointed out is you got 2 million people who not only snuck in and are on the voter roll, but they're on the Social Security system, which means now when they work, they're paying in, and I guess that's great, kind of put money into the system. But what's happened is you have distorted not only the retirement plan of the United States, only to find out there's billions of dollars in waste. Social Security people got 2.5% increase this year, and everybody's always worried about Social Security going out of business and collapsing. Well, if you were sending billions of dollars around the world to people who don't exist, you wouldn't have to worry about the instability of the Social Security system, and you wouldn't have to worry about a 2.5% raise when inflation's 3.5%. But the point is, this is the mechanism they used. You stuff the system, you stuff the voter roll, none of those people are going to show up at the polls and vote, so you vote for them. It's just like when you have a proxy for an insurance company or a corporate proxy. If you own shares in a company, you vote by proxy. You sign the proxy and the board of directors votes for you. This is where the Democrats are going. They vote by proxy for these people, and it's all justified by, well, their voices must be heard. This is democracy. It's not democracy. It's the manipulation of an election system to achieve a governmental outcome that enslaves the American population at the expense of society for the benefit of people. I mean, how do you explain people going off to Congress with $166,000 a year salary and being worth $30 million? You know how hard it takes? How long?
They're just good commodity traders like Hillary. That's all.
Even with the tax system, I'm assuming they're still paying taxes. This system is rigged, and what the Doge mechanism has done, using its extraordinarily sophisticated technology, it has awakened the mind of the American person that they're getting screwed big time.
Big time.
Starting to realize, wow, I can't buy gas and eggs this week, and they got a $30 million net worth, and they're buying a $10 million house on Long Island. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about equity and fairness. This is what the American serf / taxpayer is waking up to today.
Well, it's the oligarchy for sure. But let me ask you another issue. The KYC on anti-money laundering with all the smurfing, that was obviously turned off, right? I mean, because banks, if you go into Walmart and use your card over and over again, about the third or fourth time, it's going to be shut off. But you got people using these cards tens and thousands, 50,000 times. So obviously the banks are involved in this, right? You've been working on the Smurf stuff, correct?
Well, let me tell you, my legal career up until 2020, I was a securities attorney, a corporate mergers and acquisitions guy, private equity. And I know that money is digital money. 80% of our transactions are digital. Only 20% is paper and coin. Every dollar of digital money absolutely is tracked. And that's why Doge works. They have technology they're using that they track drug dealers and gangsters and all the people. All of that money is tracked. And that's why when you look into the mechanism, you can see it. And that's what I think the left is freaking out about. When you get money from the federal government to an NGO, and the NGO pays the vendors, which are private companies, you can watch that money. So all of the money is watched. So the question is, how do these, these Smurf operations, how do you move money like that? If you were a terrorist, or a bad guy, or, a crook, you couldn't move money without being caught. You would just
they're checking $200.
You can't move money, okay?
Yeah.
I love Martha. She's a wonderful lady. But the point is, nobody gets away with this stuff, except the Democratic Party is apparently moving billions of dollars. And the question is, it's not just domestic money from billionaires, but it's offshore money. And offshore money is patently illegal under federal law. How are they doing that? And why? If you try, like you said, you go to the Walmart, you borrow your brother's card or something, you try to use it, you get caught. Nobody got caught. And we've spent a lot of time, Chris and Peter and others, a lot of time and money and energy looking deep into this. And what it shows you is, it's a money laundering operation. There's nothing sophisticated about it. It's just that they got away with it when everybody else couldn't do that.
Well, I used to work with all the offshore financial jurisdictions, Cayman, Bermuda, Hong Kong, Guernsey, back in my Wall Street days. And fascinating. You have a building with 300 banks in it. I would love to see those accounts as to this is where all this money is, man.
Read the Pentagon Papers or the Paradise Papers?
Yeah, of course. Fascinating. One more question. What about Tammy Baldwin? There's been talk about some kind of, you're an attorney with Peter and others, a quo warranto action against her for all this in her campaign. Have you thought about that? Or
Well, it's an interesting problem. The campaign is one thing, the candidate is another. But when you talk about a Senate race or a judicial candidate is separate from the campaign, theoretically. But political players, the Senate, the House, they are very much a part of the campaign. And I think it without talking strategy too much in the airwaves here,
I don't want you to give it away.
There needs to be an obligation that if you are elected to public office using illegally obtained funds, that should be a felony. Okay? Because if you're using hot money to buy a car, that's a felony. If you're using hot money to buy a house, that's a felony. But if you're using a hot money to buy a Senate seat,
it's all good.
It needs to be a felony. It just needs to be a felony. So there's a lot there. I feel really bad for Eric because he's a great guy and he's a wonderful businessman, and he put a lot of his own money into these races. It's been a problem in Wisconsin. Republicans tend to recruit people of wealth to run for public office because they can write checks to the
Sure.
media. And there's millions of dollars that are transferred into the media and the advertising and the lawn signs and all that stuff. That's an
Send
industry.
some of that to us next time.
What's that?
It said send some of that to us next time.
Well, that's an interesting problem. So you ask the question, who controls all of that? And that's something that you should probably look into, because it's pretty obvious that, we had Tim Michels ran for governor in the last cycle against Tony Evers, who's by all metrics in Wisconsin, one of the worst governors we've ever had. This guy is he's in over his head. Michael should have walked away with that race. He spent millions of dollars of his own money. Same phenomenon, lost by the same margins. Peter and I can almost predict the margin of loss at this point. We know if you look at the markets, you look at the specific tabulation sites, we're getting pretty good at knowing just how bad it's going to be. And the point is, they spend millions of dollars of their own money with the idea that they're going to win. And this stuff happens. And my argument is that they're damaged. If somebody defrauds you out of millions of dollars and pretending you're going to win only to use a mechanism to cheat you out of your money, that's actionable, in my opinion. I'm not
for sure.
these guys, but that to me, there's a cause of action in that pile somewhere. And I think that should be looked at.
Wow. Well, Dan, where can people follow you, or do you want people following you?
No, don't follow me, man. I'm just in Wisconsin, election law attorney. You can watch my Eastman financial report. It's not a political show. It's on WVW TV and Monday through Friday. But I'm on X at Professor Eastman. Track me down. But my job is to bring justice to the election system, and I'm not really grandstanding. We work quietly, we work hard, we work with some extremely talented people, and frankly, we know what's going on, and we'll get there. So that's why it's helpful that people like you on this.
Well, thank you, but you're obviously knowledgeable, so I hope you'll come back. Really enjoyed your discussion, and we're going to have Eric on in the second hour. But thanks for coming on, and we'll see you next time. We'll be right back with the SCIF.
Thank you.
Watching my friends gain more and more weight, and then eventually, I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You're not conscious of this. But that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where a nutrition-specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mixed it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition. And sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this. You take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back. Cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, an investment advisory practice. I've been an advisor for nearly 30 years, and one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, do I have enough money relative to other people my age? And while that's an interesting question, it's also the wrong question. The right question is do you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life? This is a question you should know the answer to. This is what we do. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big proud American Eagle logo.
We have foot, slogging over Africa. Foot, slogging over Africa. Boot, boots moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. 7, 6, 11.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Again, full show today. We're moving through a lot of information, but as we said, life's tough, but it's tougher if you're stupid. So we're going to make you very smart around the water cooler at work, and you'll be more knowledgeable than most if you check the show Monday through Friday, 10 to noon Eastern. So we've got Eric Hovde in the second hour. He's the guy who ran against Tammy Baldwin in Wisconsin to follow up on our discussion with Dan Eastman. We're bringing all this today in Wisconsin because the election with Susan Crawford to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. If she wins, the House could be in jeopardy for the Trump administration because she can redistrict, force redistricting, and force changes in the count in Congress. So this is a big one. We're staying on it, and Eric should be really interesting. I mentioned a couple stories. One of them is the Georgia. I'm going to bring this up because what's going on in Georgia is quite stunning. And we have been on this with our paper, The Georgia Record, georgiarecord.com. So Judge Totenberg, Amy Totenberg, dismissed a case on standing today. This is the playbook, right? She was way back in October of 2020. She was the judge on the Curling versus Raffensperger case. And all this can be found at the georgiarecord.com, which is our Georgia paper. But she, in October of 2020, said, yes, the Georgia law or the machines violate Georgia law because they don't create a ballot that the voter can confirm his vote on. They create a piece of paper with a QR code which says what you voted. So there's no way knowing what the QR code actually says. So she said that violates Georgia law. This was in October of 2020. And she said, but we're too close to the election, so we can't do anything about it. Well, then we go through the election. Trump loses. She sits on it for years, finally has a hearing last year, I believe, where the Haldeman, the expert witness on the machines, came in and actually changed the votes on the tabulators with a pen in the courtroom in front of her. But today she sits on this information all the way through the 24 election. And guess what? She dismisses it on standing. So we're going to have Garland Favorito on our Georgia show, which is going to be tomorrow night at 7 and Sunday at 2 p.m. We have it twice a week. It's on CDTV. You can find it. We're going to dig into this because he's been involved in this case for a long time and is the expert on this. But this is, it's quite disturbing what she did today, but it's not shocking because obviously a lot of this judicial corruption is going on all around the country. The other thing I wanted to talk about is Israel. There is a real concern in Israel over the issue with Turkey. And I'm going to bring this up. Israel concerned over Turkish airbase. So if you take a step back and look at what's going on in Turkey, in the Middle East, you have the Israelis fighting Hezbollah to the north, Hamas in the Gaza Strip, in the West Bank. You got the Houthis down also launching projectiles into Israel, which all of these are Iranian proxy armies for Shia Islam. And you got Trump bombing the Houthis daily in Yemen with U.S. Air Force, U.S. Navy. And you've got a possible war with Iran over their nuclear facilities. Well, you've got Turkey, which essentially is the old Ottoman Empire to the north. That's Turkey in the orange and Syria in the green, and Israel's down on the Levant a little farther south to the left. But Turkey installed or helped install with Turkish special forces and drones, according to Eric Prince, brought in the HTS government, Golani, who was a part of Al-Qaeda, who immediately murdered thousands of Christians and other minorities, and said it was an accident and he's going to prosecute, but we know that's not going to happen. But he's got a suit and a new haircut and changed his name, so he's fine now. But he has taken over Syria, and now Turkey is coming in and saying they want to establish air bases inside Syria. They actually named one where they're going to remake a base for the Turkish Air Force, and essentially Turkey, the old Ottoman Empire, is reclaiming Syria. The Israelis don't like this at all. There's a lot of fear in Jerusalem over this, and it's an ongoing story. We're one of the few that are talking about it. But again, if you come to the SCIF, you're going to get information that you won't get in other spots. So we're going to stay on this story, as we mentioned. We're going to talk in the second hour with Eric Hovde, as I discussed. We're going to finish the interview with Dr. Waterman later on nutriopathic healthcare. But one other story I wanted to bring to light here, which I'll do now. is what's going on in Russia. The Russian economy has exploded after the war started in 22, or I guess the war escalated in 22 with the invasion of Donbass and Crimea. Well, Crimea was earlier, but it's a war economy now, and it's going gangbusters. And yes, there's some inflation, but the Russian populace is very happy. And this report came out from the Bell, which we regurgitated on our Eastern European site, Tsarism.com. That's where we discuss everything former Soviet Union and surrounding territory, Tsarism.com. You can check it out, put it in your daily scan, along with CDM. By the way, put CDM.press in your daily scan 3 times a day. That's the best way you can help us. It's updated all day long. We bring you stories you're not going to get anywhere else for sure, like this one. But the Russian people are very happy, and the reason is because they are they're making money, and the economy's booming. I mean, large purchases are going up. And this is the best they've felt since back in the last problems they had about 10 years ago. So it's a decade high in happiness in the Russian people. And this is an anti-Kremlin publication, so they're coming out with this report, the Bell. So it's quite fascinating to watch. And again, we're going to stay on this story and bring you what's happening with the Russian people, because it's important, because it looks like the U.S. may be possibly getting closer to Russia if this peace deal goes through. President Trump is working on that, trying to pull Russia away from China and reestablish economic relations. I think Putin and the Kremlin and the foreign ministry said that there are rare earth deals that are being worked, other infrastructure, energy deals that American companies may participate in. And so to us, that's the best way to prevent World War III. And we can confront China and let Europe pay for NATO and their borders and their defense while they turn into a tyrannical state themselves. I think J.D. Vance was exactly right on that. We're going to take another break. When we come back, Eric Hovde will be here, I hope. And he's not here yet, but he is the one who ran against Tammy Baldwin for Senate in Wisconsin. We look forward to it. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Okay, ready?
Ready.
So we're out in the field in South Dakota shooting pheasants, and we're coming out here to a Milo field you can see behind us, and I was throwing in an ALP. Someone else was using a tobacco product, and then somebody, and I'm not going to name names, pulled that out in public at a hunt. And so that's obviously yesterday. What we have here, ALP, is tomorrow, and we're going to make that official by symbolically ending the long reign of this product. Willie Robertson happened to be hunting with us. We don't have a mechanical thrower, but we do have former U.S. Senator Rick Santorum of Pennsylvania. With an arm. Willie's got a 12 gauge. I've got my trusty 20. And we're going to see what we can do to usher out the Zen era.
Yes!
So, I should say, alppouch.com. For sale now, alppouch.com. Usher in tomorrow a brand new world of nicotine pouches. The American Lip Pillow on sale now.
Warning! This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, an investment advisory practice. I've been an advisor for nearly 30 years, and one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, do I have enough money relative to other people my age? And while that's an interesting question, it's also the wrong question. The right question is do you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life? This is a question you should know the answer to. This is what we do. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big proud American Eagle logo.
promised you we'd have Eric Hovde on from Wisconsin, and I'm going to bring him in. Sir, thank you for joining us this morning. We just had Dan Eastman on last hour. He was quite informative, but I appreciate you coming on.
Hey, good morning. I hope you're having a wonderful day. It's a big day for the state of Wisconsin. We have 3 really big votes in our state. Obviously, the state Supreme Court, that's getting a lot of the attention. But we also have the school superintendent, and Wisconsin schools have been just failing right and left over the last 20 years. And then lastly, we have a referendum on our vote on the ballot today that's going to require and put into our Constitution voter ID law. So it's a really important day for the state of Wisconsin.
Well, let's take a step back, and then I want to talk about the election. Your race was disturbing, I would say, with the vote by mail issues, et cetera. What are the main things that really bother you about what happened in your race against Tammy Baldwin?
Sure. Well, there's so many different issues, so it's going to take me a little bit of time to unpack. So, you know, look, it was a devastating night because at 1 a.m. I was called by the NRSC. Welcome to the U.S. Senate. President Trump announced, you know, as part of the red wave heading to the Senate, I had pollsters saying, you got this, you know, 94% of the vote was in. I was up by a comfortable margin. And then at 4:30 a.m., they dropped 120,000 same-day voter ballots and absentee ballots. Somehow she got an amazing 85% of those, which basically is statistically improbable.
Yeah.
And particularly when you look at a certain segment of Milwaukee, which was an ethnic community that I was about 50-50, it really had her for all the rest of it getting 90%. And that wasn't showing up in any polling anywhere, in early voting, nothing. So what were the different issues? Well, you had precincts in Milwaukee that voted at 150, 201, even at 250% of registered voters.
Wow.
Now think of that. That doesn't happen. We're one of only 6 states in the country that allows same-day voter registration. So it's very easy to manipulate that. Secondly, absentee ballots. We have one of the weakest absentee ballot laws in the state of Wisconsin. Literally, you could sit wherever you are in the country and go order an absentee ballot to somebody else and send it outside our state. We don't even require anything that if somebody can claim that they're indefinitely confined. Then you go into the issues of nursing homes and how they ballot harvest aggressively in nursing homes. Then you go to probably one of the biggest issues, and that is they had put an America First candidate on the ballot backed by Democratic attorneys, Democrat donors. All the signatories are largely Democrats. And here's the interesting thing, which we're going to be bringing out soon, but I guess I'm breaking the news with you. And that is they hired a Milwaukee-based media firm. And that media firm hired 2 convicted felons to go get the signatures, the 2,000 signatures required to get them on the ballot. Well, if that would have been contested, we would have known that person would have never been on the ballot because a felon, convicted felon, getting those signatures would have thrown those signatures off the ballot. So that person, you know, anybody showing up to the booth that's not really focusing on the election and you're a Trump supporter, you see this guy under the America First brand, you're thinking he's aligned with President Trump. No, he was just a phony shill for the Democratic Party to siphon votes off of me, which, by the way, it was enough votes to cause me to lose. They also did spend money on behalf of the Libertarian candidate that got 42 or 43,000 votes. Again, more than enough that got siphoned off of me. And the Libertarian candidate was like, who's spending this money on my behalf? I didn't pay for this. Nobody I know is paying for this the mail and some of the things that they were doing on his behalf. So there, as I said, there's so many different layers of what they did in this election. But we're digging into some real hard data, and it's very clear that a lot of people probably voted in this election that don't either live in the state, may not be alive today. So, the Democrats are very good at ballot harvesting beyond people that are legible voters.
So, do you think there needs to be a federal response to all this? Because obviously in Wisconsin, there's rampant, I would call it organized crime throughout the entire system, the judiciary, the elections, et cetera. Do you think there needs to be an outside force to come in and try to force the rule of law in Wisconsin?
I'm going to take you back, and I'm going to talk about a little history, and I'm going to bring you up and address that point, because I think it's really important for people to understand what's happened in Wisconsin. If you went back into really any time pre-2012, Wisconsin would have been regarded as one of the best states for election integrity. We're a bunch of upper Midwesterners, fairness and legality matter in our state. And we largely ran fair elections. And if you looked at the state of Wisconsin in the 70s, the 80s, and 90s, and the 00s, we were probably a center-left state, to be honest with you. And you could see that because our state legislative body, both the Assembly and the Senate and the congressional seats, lean Democrat. But at the same time, at the statewide races for the governor, the state AG, for Senate races, it would go back and forth. In fact, Republican governors controlled the governorship longer than Democrats, because Tommy Thompson won 4 times in a row. But Lee Dreyfus, Tommy Thompson, obviously Scott Walker. Everything changed in 2012. Because what happened in 2010, Barack Obama won in 2008, handedly in the state of Wisconsin, and then he got shellacked in 2010. And I'll tell you what I think happened. I think Barack Obama brought Chicago-style politics out of Chicago and Illinois, and the easiest state to co-opt was the state of Wisconsin. Why do I say that? Well, one, Wisconsin and Illinois are very connected. The city of Chicago and Milwaukee, extremely connected. I mean, we're only, an hour and a half north of Chicago, Milwaukee is. But secondly, we are only one of 6 states that allow same-day voter registration. And as I said, we have some of the weakest absentee ballot laws. So it was very easy for them to bring Chicago-style politics, which everybody knows in this country, Chicago's probably been the most corrupt city from, politics since, for 100 years. And all of a sudden, Republicans cannot win at a statewide level. I mean, Ron Johnson is the only one who's basically pulled it off. It's won by a hair. But largely,
we had a hand in that race because the polls were showing him down 5, and we do some really accurate polling, and we did a poll showing him up 5, and everybody had to come up, and I think we had a hand in at least putting pressure on them to not fully go steal on that race. But anyway, back to you.
But the point is, if you look at it since, Wisconsin has shifted to a center-right state now. Our state assembly, our state Senate have been solidly in Republican hands. Our congressional seats are in Republican hands and have been. And now, since 2012, we can't win at a statewide level other than Ron, who was a sitting senator. So it tells you something is very troubling. So I'm getting back to your point. Yes, I absolutely strongly believe that you need somebody to go in there, a thorough review of what is happening. I have a pretty good idea of what is happening in Milwaukee, in Dane County, and a variety of different areas, and really dig into what has been transpiring there. Because look, fair elections are so essential. And if you don't have that, it's the most corrosive thing to a democracy. People give up, and it's kind of like what's happened to California. Then you got
Yeah.
one party control over an area in a state, and then they got to run amok because there's no governor to that party and the craziness in which they'll take it. So you take California, one of the most beautiful states, one of the most rich states from you name it, oil and gas and technology and all the rest, and they've destroyed the state because it's been basically one party rule, and they've corrupted the political process.
So let's talk about your race. I mean, you were looking at challenging this, and I'm told, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm told that the GOP came in and told you it would take millions of your own money to fix this race or to challenge it. I mean, how did that go down?
Well, it really was a two-part issue. Part of it was the law, and that is if I was going to ask for a recount, all that you do in a recount is take the same flawed ballots and shove them through the same machines, and all it's going to do is move the numbers by 1,000 or 2,000. You're not getting at the heart of the issue, and that is, were these absentee ballots legitimate ballots, and should these people have been voting? So to do that, then you would have had to go into the state courts. And if I went into the state courts, given how politicized this new state Supreme Court has become, I knew the likelihood of me being able to be successful was slim to none, because there's no way this state Supreme Court, how it's constructed today, would give a fair hearing.
Yeah.
So it was a big part of where the law stood and how our state Supreme Court was constructed at this point in time. And then, yes, you are going to have to spend millions of dollars, and you're still not going to be able to go, hey, let's look at this ballot. Is this a legitimate ballot? Does this person live here? And even if you brought forth, this ballot is very clearly tied to a FedEx box or a PO box or to some other state, it's a crazy thing, and it's a technical thing. You get into a drawdown where you just take ballots out, not knowing if it's her ballot or my ballot, out of a bin. And so it was just it was a depressing 3 weeks because I knew what happened to me. But, I spent time talking to, some of the top law firms in the country with election integrity focus, and they're like, yeah, it's going to be a really long, hard battle.
Yeah.
So that's why I finally, after 3 weeks of making the assessment of going, look, there's really little option for me. And, it was a painful time because I gave up a year of my life. I spent a lot of money. As I said, I was told at 1 a.m., hey, welcome to the Senate. And then the rug gets pulled out from under me. And, it has huge implications because another vote in the Senate would have helped on a number of different issues. And certainly as we go through the next couple of election cycles. But most importantly, I can't tell you the amount of people that are upset in Wisconsin, the amount of people that see me on the streets or have sent me a text or emails. Everybody knew something was wrong, because most people went to bed going, yeah, the numbers, it's pretty unlikely that he's going to lose. I mean, I can't tell you, I had probably 200 texts that night congratulating me and saying, great job, and then people waking up and going, how did this happen?
Did the Trump team reach out to you at all, or
they haven't reached out to me? I've heard that President Trump has said, look, Eric got robbed. I hope Harmeet Dillon, who's now over the Civil Rights Division, which election integrity is under at the Justice Department, gets involved at some point in time. And I appreciate the fact, Kash Patel and all these people have just been put into their positions. But I certainly hope at some point over the next 6 to 9 months, they start going, hey, we got to dig into some of these things that ended up happening.
The elections, as you said, are the bedrock. I mean, if it's the meme going around, the Gulf of no one's been arrested yet. I mean, this is a major issue that we got to take care of, and I don't see it yet. Maybe I'm wrong. We got the EO, but I don't see the focus on elections yet.
It hasn't happened yet, but they better well get focused. I mean, in saying that, President Trump just signed an executive order
Right.
last week, which was good to see. Now, will the state adhere to it? In the state of Wisconsin, probably not. And you're going to have all these judges trying to rule against him and block what he's doing, which is a whole nother topic that we could spend a half hour on.
Well,
but,
on that note, do you have time for another segment? Can I go to, how you doing on time?
Unfortunately, today, I would love to come back on, but
Let's do
today,
that.
my time is a little tight today because I have a series of meetings. But when you reached out last night, I said, sure, I'll carve some stuff out. But
And I appreciate that.
If you want to try to shoot for later in the week, or happy to do that.
We'll get back to you. One more question. KYC, anti-money laundering issues. I understand you're a banking guy. How did all this get turned off for all these smurfing donations? I mean, when you go in and use a card 50,000 times.
Okay, this I may give you a little more time because this is okay. I'm going to tell you a brief story and how I was already very aware of how money laundering, and I didn't even go down what happened to me in this election because Tammy Baldwin received an enormous amount of money from these small dollar, high frequency donors and Smurfs. So I'm going to take you back to 1997, 1998. One of my business lines, and at that point, my primary business lines was buying community banks, turning around and fixing them up. So we got reached out by the FDIC, and the FDIC said to us, we got this Asian American bank in the LA Basin where it was 30% controlled by a Chinese national. He is, the bank's in trouble. He is taken off to China. The bank needs a capital infusion and needs new leadership because it's in trouble. So we did review. I put money in and I put one of my guys as CEO. One of the very first things we discovered was 24 accounts where money would come out of the Central Bank of China into these 24 accounts and then max out to the Clinton-Gore reelection campaign of '96. We brought it to the FEC and Capitol Hill. It went nowhere, probably because Clinton and Gore were in control. This takes me to about 5 years ago. A couple guys in Wisconsin and a guy elsewhere in Florida started looking at this data and going, who are these people that are donating at this level? And so it's, as you know, it's largely retired people, former government employees, Democrats that are giving at ungodly amounts. So the way to get at this is through the banking system. Probably one of the most critical things that a bank has to adhere to is anti-money laundering, AML, KYC, Know Your Customer, and BSA, Bank Secrecy Act. And it is so important for banks to understand where the flow of money. And what has been going on has been sickening. So Stripe has been the processor. Wells Fargo has been the bank that's the merchant processor for Stripe. But you have all these other banks that were involved with gift cards and all the rest that were funneling probably either foreign money into Democratic hands or big soft dollar donors that want to take their soft dollars and get it at the hard dollars because the campaign can use hard dollars much more efficiently because you can buy media at a cheaper rate than you can through a PAC. So there's no question in my mind. It's the reason why small dollar donation skyrocketed for Democrats over Republicans, because they've been running basically a money laundering machine.
Well, to me, the evidence has been out there for some time and the government needs to get on it. I'll let you go, Eric. Thank you for your time. We'll have you back down the road and stay with us on the SCIF. Take care.
Sounds good, Todd. Thanks so much. Everybody have a great day.
bird flu is circulating. We're getting more and more press, more fear mongering, more warnings about this. First, let's start with that. What say you on?
Well, what I say is it specifically is not circulating. It's in animals. There's one human, maybe two transmissions, no human-to-human transmission. And stand by, everybody. If there is some sort of sudden human-to-human transmission, you should immediately be suspicious that gain of function was involved with that. Just the fact that they're taking an animal virus and going nuts on it in the press and talking about it all the time, that to me leads me to believe that they have concerns that somebody is doing something with that virus, because this would not happen naturally, in my opinion.
Our world is changing rapidly. Many crucial systems we depend upon are collapsing. And the most important system that is failing is the food supply.
Mr. President, this Council is more than aware of the multiple challenges and threats the world is facing today. But the threat of famine, people starving slowly to death, must be a red line.
These food prices are going to keep going up and up, and they're going to keep feeding excuse after excuse, narrative after narrative.
Yeah,
so you're going to have to get off that treadmill and start getting more autonomous with your own food growing.
You want to make sure that you can eat, because frankly, food is the biggest issue as we are going through these transitions.
But amidst the chaos, there is a path to resilience. Marjorie Wildcraft is the female leader of the survival and preparedness movement. Marjorie has taught millions of people how to grow an abundance of food in a grid-down situation, even if you have no experience, are older, or out of shape.
I've spent decades finding the fastest, easiest, and funnest ways for the average person to be able to grow a lot of food. I've created a step-by-step process that's so simple that even kids to elders have been using it in order to grow a lot of their own food. And you can too, even if you have no experience, you're older, or you're out of shape.
Growing your own food is like printing your own money. Get started today.
Welcome back to the SCIF. President Trump wants a third term. It looks like he's really serious about this. He said so himself. We played that in the cold open. I hope you saw that. I wanted to run a little bit of Alan Dershowitz. The constitutional issue is the main question here. There's the 22nd Amendment. Can the president run? The amendment's pretty specific, and a lot of people are digging into this, and we're going to stay on this story. But I want to run real quick Alan Dershowitz and his explanation of what this is about, because in my opinion, Trump sees that he's going to need more than 4 years to deal with this Marxist revolution, and trying to stay in for another term is his answer to that, or at least one answer to that. So we're going to run this with Alan Dershowitz and let him talk about it a little bit.
Today, I want to talk about a constitutional issue as if it were an abstract theoretical constitutional issue, because it is abstract. I mean, let me start with the end. President Trump will not serve a third term. That's my prediction. And he won't, not because he might not be elected to the third term, like Franklin Roosevelt was elected very overwhelmingly to a third term and also to a fourth term, but because after President Roosevelt was elected to his fourth term, they passed the 22nd Amendment. And the 22nd Amendment is as clear as anything could possibly be. No, it's not actually. It has one ambiguous word. It says, no person shall be elected to the office of president more than twice. No person shall be elected to the office of president. So what President Trump's people have been saying, because he says, well, I don't know, maybe I'll run again a third time. He can't run. He can't be elected to the office unless there's a constitutional amendment. And to get a constitutional amendment through today is impossible. You need 2/3 of both houses. And you need 3/4 of the states. You just can't get it. It's just not. We live in a partisan world. The only amendments that ever get passed now are
amendments over which there was almost universal acceptance. Even the Equal Rights Amendment for women eventually didn't make it. I mean, according to Larry Tribe, it made it, but according to everybody else, it failed by its own terms. Remember, amendments have their own terms. For example, the 22nd Amendment says basically that, let's see, this article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislature of the 3/4 of the several states within 7 years from the date of its submission. And the Equal Rights Amendment didn't make that kind of cutoff. And Tribe says that's okay because he likes that amendment. I like the amendment too, but it can't be passed unless it's passed pursuant to the terms that its own words provide. So the president cannot be elected. He cannot be elected to a third term. What some people are talking about is saying, well, here we can get around that because here's what we're going to do. We're going to get J.D. Vance to be elected president, and we're going to get Donald Trump to be elected vice president. He's going to be elected vice president. And then J.D. Vance will resign. And so then, pursuant to the 22nd Amendment, he'll be allowed to serve because he will not have been elected. He will not have been elected to that office. No person shall be elected. He will have been appointed to the office through the succession process, which is part of the Constitution. If the president can't serve, the vice president serves. There's only one problem with that. There's another amendment to the Constitution. It's called the 12th Amendment. You remember from the play Hamilton, there was a screw up as to how you elect the vice president and the president, and so they passed the 12th Amendment. But here's what the 12th Amendment says. No person shall be no person constitutionally ineligible to the office of president shall be eligible to that of vice president of the United States. So since he wouldn't be eligible to the office of president, he is not eligible to the office of vice president. So the ploy of electing him as vice president and appointing him as president won't work. Now, there is another possibility. Again, we're talking about legally abstract possibilities. See if I can find it. I think I put it on my, yeah, here it is. Okay. So there is also the Presidential Succession Act. There have been 3 of them enacted by Congress. One at the time of the framing, another in the 19th century sometimes, and another one after President Roosevelt died and Harry Truman was made the president. He had been the vice president, and he was worried, well, what if he dies? Who then becomes the president? So they passed the Presidential Succession Act. So here's the way it is argued by the Trump supporters of a third term. He could become president. It's very clever, but in the end, I don't think it works. It's very clever, though. Okay. So whoever gets elected president 4 years from now, that's fine. Whoever that person is appoints Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump, to be either the Speaker of the House, which you can do without being a member of the House, or you can run for the House, or appoints him to be Secretary of State. Secretary of State, okay? Then everybody resigns. President resigns, Vice President resigns, Speaker of the House resigns, President pro tempore of the Senate resigns. Who then becomes president under the Presidential Succession Act? The Secretary of State. So Donald Trump becomes the president through the Presidential Succession Act without being elected president. So that doesn't violate the 22nd Amendment. It doesn't violate the 12th Amendment, but it may very well violate the terms of the Presidential Succession Act itself. Okay, the Presidential Succession Act says subsections A, B, and D, those are the relevant sections, shall apply only to such offices as are eligible to the office of president under the Constitution. So let's do a hypothetical. Let's assume that when Nixon resigned, let's assume Ford then resigned, and the Speaker of the House and the President pro tempore of the Senate will resign. The next person would have been the Secretary of State. Who was the Secretary of State? Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger, however, was not eligible to be president of the United States. Why not? He was not born in the United States. And the only people eligible to be president have to be born in the United States. So Kissinger could not have been eligible. So the question is whether the law that says shall apply only to officers appointed who are eligible to the office of president, whether Trump is eligible to be president. That brings us back to the 22nd Amendment. The 22nd Amendment doesn't talk about who's eligible to be president. The 22nd Amendment talks about who can run for president. And so the argument would go, who can be elected president? 22nd Amendment, no person shall be elected. So the question goes back to, if he is he eligible to be president if he's not elected president, but he's appointed president? That, I think, is
Well, in the case of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, these are two medications that have been FDA approved for use in humans for decades. They are very, very inexpensive. Interestingly, available over the counter in almost every other country other than the US and Canada. You can just walk into a pharmacy and buy them like we buy Tylenol in much of the world because they're that safe. And we've known for decades that ivermectin has very strong antiviral properties. It has anti-inflammatory properties, and both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are what we call zinc ionophores. They help to move zinc from the bloodstream into the cell, which is where it needs to be in order to fight off a virus. So lots of application for these, and we have every reason to believe that those drugs also will likely have some efficacy against H5N1 or a number of other respiratory viruses that we may meet down the road.
If you haven't noticed, gold has reached a new high, all-time highs actually, and keeps going up every day. Why is that? It's because precious metals are a long-time historical store of value. And if you own a portfolio and you have assets in the fiat currencies, i.e. stocks, bonds, cash, or whatever, you're vulnerable to hyperinflation, which is coming as our debt explodes another trillion every 90 days. It's really scary. So how do you protect yourself? Go to Advisor Metals. If you look on any of our CDM.press sites, about halfway down, there's an ad for Advisor Metals. Click on it, fill out the form for your contact info, and Ira Bishotsky will contact you and talk to you. It's an easy conversation. There's no sales pitch. He's completely verified by us. He has a regulatory background we've checked into. We've checked with his bankers. We've checked with his IRA custodians for metals, and we can highly recommend Advisor Metals and IRA. So go to Advisor Metals. If you call them directly, tell them we sent you at CDM, and he'll definitely take care of you. But protect your portfolio because you really need to. It's coming. Thank you. Welcome back to the SCIF. Thanks for joining us. I want to ask, please, that you support our sponsors. And if you go to cdm.press at the top, the second menu line, all of our different sponsors, The Wellness Company, Advisor Metals, Out Pouch by Tucker Carlson, all of that, please support us and buy from them. And one of the ways you can do that is with books. And I'm going to bring up the Manhattan.press, which is our paper in New York City. And let me just bring up that There's the URL, the Manhattan.press. If you go to the top of the site, and I'll just make that a little bigger, to the right is the Manhattan bestsellers. If you click on that, this is our answer to the New York Times bestsellers list. There's editors' picks for children, for adults, and then there's all just the best-selling books. These are not, there's no bias in this at all. We don't care if they're liberal, conservative, communist, whatever. It's just the books that sell the most every week. It's a couple weeks old on the date. This one, I think, is of March 8th. It's being updated shortly because there's a lot of data that we have to collect to get these out, and it takes a while for that to get to us. But really scroll through this, and if you want one of these books, you can buy it. So go to checkout, and you can buy the book from the CDM bookstore. At the top of CDM.press is the CDM bookstore. If you're buying books for to read or for school or for business or whatever, buy it from us instead of from Amazon, which is the globalist oligarch that is against you. So it's one way you can support free media. People buy books all the time. Buy them from the CDM bookstore. Top of the CDM.press menu is right there, CDM bookstore, and buy them there. So thank you for that. And all of our other sponsors, please support us. By the way, put CDM.press in your daily scan. That is the primer for this show. Primer. We are a news wire. We don't, we get some stuff off the internet, but we have reporters all over the world that we confirm stuff with. And you're going to get news that you're not going to get anywhere else, days or weeks or months sometimes, or years, as we saw. I saw Dr. McCullough on Laura Ingraham a month or so ago, talking about all the stuff we've been talking about for 2 years. So literally sometimes years ahead, which could impact your health or your safety or whatever. We get the information out. And that's the basis of this show, is our reporting from all our reporters from around the world. We're also on podcasts. So if you're driving to work or on the train, out for a walk, I just had Murph, one of our readers here, tell me he just was out walking the dog listening to the show. So check it out on podcasts. We stream on Rumble, on X, on Gettr. We're on YouTube. If you're a YouTuber, the show is loaded up right after this. We don't stream there live because we have to check and make sure nothing is said that would upset the YouTube gods. But we do post there. We post a lot of clips there as well of different guests on the show, and that's been really, really popular. People love the CDM clips. But check us out on podcasts. Check us out on YouTube, Gettr, X, Rumble, everywhere we stream, and help us grow our audience. Spread the links. Tell your friends about the show. That's really important. Say, hey, I found this great new show in the mornings. If you want a good new show with intel that you need to know, this is the show. So that's what we're focused on. We're going to play Dr. John Waterman a little bit in a second about the rest of that interview we started yesterday, but I wanted to talk about Pete Hegseth and what he did recently, which is really, 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 really important. I'm going to play this video.
Pete Hegseth here. We're about to land in Washington, D.C. on our way back from Japan, where we've been meeting with the troops, talking to allies and partners, reestablishing deterrence in the Indo-Pacific. It's Sunday, but of course we're still working. I want to show you one thing. It's a new memorandum that's coming out today on combat arms standards. You see, for far too long, we allowed standards to slip, and different standards for men and women in combat arms MOSs and jobs. That's not acceptable. We need to have the same standard, male or female, in our combat roles to ensure our men and women who are under our leaders or in those formations have the best possible leaders and the highest possible standards that are not based at all on your sex, if you're a man or a woman. So I'm signing this memorandum today. The services will review, and soon we will have nothing but the highest and equal standards for men and women in combat.
So that, my friends, is hugely important. I'm not sure what happened on the display there, but I'm going to show you where this article is on armedforces.press. You can find it there, armedforces.press. That is the URL. That's our military channel, and so much good information there. But this is a key issue to restore the combat effectiveness of our armed forces. You know, we've been very involved in trying to get the DEI out of the service academies, out of the DoD in general. We helped form stars.us, which is a group that has been instrumental in removing this cancer, this Marxist Maoist doctrine from our military. We're really proud of our support and work with STARS, but this is a huge story and it needs to continue. And we're going to stay right on top of this and try to make sure that our combat arms are the most lethal and most effective in the world. The military is not a social experiment. It's to kill people and break things at the direction of the president. So we want to get back to that mission, and we thank Secretary Hegseth for helping us achieve that and getting, when you have girls essentially who are, their bodies are built differently, and you give them a lower standard, you're lowering the combat effectiveness of a unit. And I'm not talking drone operators sitting in a building. I'm talking frontline combat troops. And if you can meet the standard, great, but it needs to be one standard. I'm not saying girls shouldn't be there necessarily, but you got to meet the standard. If you can't meet the standard, you don't lower the standard so you can get more girls in the combat arms. So we want to really talk about that. And one more story before we go to our next segment is Qatargate. And you've seen this in Israel with Bibi Netanyahu possibly being involved in taking money from Qatar, or at least those on his staff. It's being used by the Shin Bet, which is the FBI in Israel, to prosecute or try to prosecute him. He had removed the head of Shin Bet and established another guy, and then that was removed this morning. So there's a lot of drama going on in Israel. You can go to Zionism.com and check out our Israeli site, and where we just have a good discussion about what's going on in Israel. It's not meant to promote an agenda, but to just have good discussion and reporting in that neck of the woods. So I'm going to take our last break. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go right into the interview with Dr. Waterman, which we started yesterday. I promised we'd finish it today. And so we're going to do that. And let me bring that up. And he is a nutriopathic, and it's fascinating what he discusses. So we're going to let him finish. So here we go.
Is our immunity is normal.
Mm-hmm.
Todd, you and I have been living side by side of people that have AIDS or, that kind of problem for decades.
Yeah.
I'm sure they've been in the grocery stores with us, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that we might have breathed a little bit of something from them. But you know what? Our immune system works. It can even get rid of AIDS. Yeah. So, so now go ahead. If they want to come after me, I'm ready for that one. But anyway, the thing is about our body is now, if there's just a little tiny particle, well, we can get rid of that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And, but if you have a truckload of it come in a big, heavy dose, is when HIV takes over. It can't be, it overwhelms you by the quantity. So when you begin to look at the cultures that have high incidence of AIDS, then you can understand gay men and HIV comes in through certain functions, right? Because it comes in a large quantity. Okay. The other one is dirty needles. Everybody passes the needle around and they get a lot of viri through those kinds of exposures at the levels that don't come in nature.
Right. Makes sense.
And so because you and I can be exposed to a lot of things, our body can take care of it. If it just needs to learn what it is, and then it'll go after it. So what they were doing is giving us HIV in this vaccine. But guess what they didn't miss? They knew that our immune systems had to be lowered for them to become effective. So what does the other two parts of the vaccine do? And what does the mRNA part do? It begins to replicate. And what does this whole vaccine mess cause our body to do? It lowers the immunity.
Yeah.
Now, when you start having the respiratory symptoms early, that's obvious. Why? Because there's SARS and MERS involved. But the answer to the problem with SARS and MERS is a very interesting, simple answer. But the answers to staying healthy and keeping away from even SARS or any of those things getting into you is staying healthy. Because when you're
strongest at that point.
Yeah, because your body's smarter than the labs are. Our bodies are smarter than the doctors. And all we have to do is give it a chance to do its job. And then we won't get sick and chronic diseases, but things have been going really bad. And so it ends up that we have less nutrient dense food of nutrients. Now, here's what I'm going to say. Many people say, well, I go to the health food store and I get organic food. Now, organic means only one thing, two things: no pesticides, no herbicides. I suggest you check into the WISE Foundation because they teach people how to make nutrient dense soil in their organic gardens. Now, I used to take a bricks meter, go to a farmer's market and get organic food and check the density and levels of the nutrients in their food. I really would. I'd walk around with my meter, squeeze stuff and check it right there. And I found many organic foods very low in nutrients. Now, I knew I wasn't going to be getting pesticides and herbicides, but we want more than that. And that's pretty much the case today, Todd, where we get mass-produced organic foods is because the plant wants to pull out 20 different kinds of minerals, but we only put 3 in the soil.
Right.
What
Makes
happens
sense.
is we might think we're eating good, and then we find ourselves kind of getting sick, going, what's going on? And, even today, there was a guy that was doing an intel briefing for us, and it was real important. We're talking about a bunch of stuff, and we haven't gotten into the fact that I spent about 15 years as an asset in the military intel. But anyway, what ended up happening, he ate a strawberry, an organic strawberry, and he got sick as a dog. So we are having compromised foods even today, even when we're trying to eat the right things.
Because they had bacteria in them or something, or
it was, yeah. Now, see, there are protections from some of these chemicals. Yeah, nothing will live, not even you. You go get some Monsanto, put it in your body, you're going to be in trouble. But what we want is a balanced nutrients in a plant. God meant for our plants, the weeds not to show up. There is a philosophy from some of these people that God allows the weeds to grow when the soil is imbalanced. And I've noticed that. There was a man that wanted to do organic soy, and he wanted to be certified. So he had to wait 3 years on the herbicides, 2 years on the pesticides, or the other way around. I can't remember. And in the meantime, he was working the soil for nutrient density. And once you get the soil balanced, Dr. Reams told us you got to get the soil balanced, and then you will have the proper balance. And when you plant a food for the body, guess what won't grow is the weeds.
Interesting.
Okay, so weeds are kind of like the infections to the good products called plants and foods we grow. That's their infection. You and I get sick because our terrain gets out of balance. Well, that's the same thing in the soil. You and I are made from this thing called dirt. And when we get out of balance, we have the same thing happen. Weeds start to grow in our body. So we have to keep the nutrient density up. Now, there isn't enough help yet to do that without a lot of work. Okay. I hope that Robert Kennedy's work will, make some headways or allow us the freedom to talk about this without having to worry about, being shot. And so what's going on today is to be really safe, Todd, and you've got to, it's like, let's go out here to the road and there's pots and poles in there, and somebody's been trying to work on it and they just can't, they don't know enough about how to keep it. But if you can get out there and just as a little simple road, fill in the holes properly, you just kind of have smooth sailing, right? And that's what we want in our body. We want nutrients that we don't understand how to get well enough yet because our suppliers are lacking knowledge on nutrient density foods. I still advocate organic foods. I still advocate, don't do abusive stuff like just lots of sugar and so forth. So, but what we might not know is happening to us is the industry has been so pressured by the outside non-organic food industry. They've taken shortcuts in growing, although they didn't put the herbicide and pesticide in. They don't realize that when I went to that farmer's market and I tested non-organic foods, that their mineral and nutrient levels were higher than the organic people's. It's because they don't know, like the commercial growers that do that kind of food, that they're adding probably more nutrients to the soil than the organic guys.
Interesting.
All they're doing is pulling out the organic. So what you have to have is something like, well, and as we all know now, Nucleo. And Nucleo is awesome because a form that's hard to, it doesn't come in a form that your body's going to have to break down to get. That's it right there. You betcha.
So this is what drove you to develop
Well,
this, was your knowledge of this, right? That there was missing. Yeah.
The delivery system is important too, because in a micronutrient manner, with a way to deliver the nutrients, that has to be our supplement companies that can manufacture stuff. They can do stuff today that we didn't used to do. I still, now for the last 10 years, Todd, I've been doing genetic testing. Now, what is genetic testing for? Well, to find out what's not being made in our body, how something's not being done. You know, you might get sick because of a genetic defect. Okay. Now, there's two ways to be genetically messed up: born that way, like a type 1 diabetic, or acquire. You can go to Vietnam, get Agent Orange, and you're going to have some defects, a genetic defect. You acquired it. Okay. And that happens to us. We get exposed. And even the EMF world, oh my gosh, would you be 2 hours on that one?
Yeah. We'll get to that next time.
But what we're wanting to do, when I look at, you just held up the ball, but when I look at this, the most important aspect is the form you're getting these nutrients in. It's a micro delivery system, and it has even got like the aloe is a special kind of, it makes your body more able to absorb it being in this form. And what you do when you can get that kind of delivery system is you just stack up all the nutrients in a broad base here and gently let the body take that all in.
You know, when John B. Wells was talking about the bio-aloe, I looked it up, and sure enough, it's kind of like, you know, we learned during COVID that the zinc is the weapon, but the hydrochloroquine got it into the cell, if I'm correct. But the bio-aloe is the similar situation, is what I learned looking at it.
Right. Now, for example, bromelain is an enzyme. It's not necessarily a mineral or vitamin, it's an enzyme. So why am I talking about it? Here's why. Genetically, our body has a code. It says make this, and it doesn't make, Advil. It makes organic substances that the pharmaceutical company can't patent. So all these chemicals in our body, they cannot patent them, and they don't want anything to do with it, right? So they're not interested in doing genetic tests to know what organic substance you can't make. But you can't make it once it's broke. We don't play God and fix the genes. We don't play God like Fauci. And
well, I hope you are enjoying Dr. Waterman. We're going to bring him back. Hope you're enjoying Dr. Waterman. We're going to bring him back and have him on the show many times. But cdmnutrition.com is where you can find out about Nucleo. Nucleo Boost. It's what gives us our stamina here at CDM. We use it daily, put it in a shake, whatever. It's not candy, but it definitely packs a punch to make you raring to go. Boost my energy level, helps with some autoimmune stuff I got from COVID. I think it does. That's been my experience, and the stamina is what really makes it good for me. So check it out. You get if you get the subscription, it's cheaper. But Nucleo Boost is the product. We're very proud of it. We're going to keep talking about it here at CDM and trying to make our audience healthy. With that, look forward to having you back. We'll be back tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. on the SCIF, Monday through Friday, 10 to noon Eastern. Tell your friends. We'll see you tomorrow.